government fails, the world's off its rails, leaders are whacked, democracy is under attack. It's time to get smart, folks, time to get real. Let's cut through the crap, tell us how you feel. Let's cue the talent, let's meet the host. Podcast by George.
Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome on in to another podcast by George, TGIF. Happy New Year, and I want to continue with my theme that I always have on podcast by George in the new year here, and it's not a lot of happiness. I don't see a lot of good news out there on the horizon. The doomsday clock is going to get reset. We're going to talk about that very shortly, and we're going to welcome back on to the podcast by George Liveline, a returnee, guy that I really like. And of course, it is Stephen Semler. We're going to be talking about climate, war, and healthcare, the big three. But there's Stephen Semler's podcast by George Liveline graphic. He's the co-founder of SPRI, Security Policy Reform Institute. He follows the money on U.S. foreign and domestic policy issues. He writes for working class grassroots organizers and candidates. All are welcome, he says, so don't hesitate to contact Stephen. He'd like to work for you. You can learn more about the Security Policy Reform Institute at securityreform.org. And one of the easy places to find his writings and to catch up with him is on Substack. You'll see that there in the graphic, stephensemler.substack.com. You can sign up there, throw him a few bucks to support his work and be first to know about all of his great graphics and charts and stuff that he puts together. It's really good. And of course, I get updated regularly on his stuff at Stephen on Twitter. It's at Stephen Semler, and it's with that PH, Stephen with a PH Semler on Twitter. So, okay, let's put this away now and bring him in. Click this button and say good morning to our good buddy, Stephen Semler. Hi, Stephen.
Hey, George. Good morning.
Yeah, thanks for coming on in here, pal. We've got you for about half an hour today, and that's about all. But that ought to be enough to get a lot of this covered. I wanted to get with you on a couple of things that I saw. One of them has to do with the omnibus bill that was just passed. I think a lot of people are are they too dumb or are they in on it? I mean, they're not looking at the forest for the trees here when it comes to that omnibus bill. And then also this Build Back Better thing that you have been all over since the very beginning, and it's now kind of entering its retrospective. I mean, we're kind of looking backwards at it. You say, did we build back better? And the theme of the show, the title that I put on here is, who are we? And this really gets to the crux of what America is, what we're going to be. And you're right that building back better, the slogan's original concrete meaning, was established in Joe Biden's budget request for fiscal year 2022, where it described his two-part economic agenda. The American Jobs Plan, yay, jobs for climate-focused infrastructure. Yeah, not much. And the American Families Plan for social welfare. You know, Stephen, I read that every word matters. I really pay attention to the words because you're a wordsmith. I mean, that's the nature of the business. Social welfare. Welfare's going back to the days of Reagan and my era in the news business. It's taken on an extremely negative connotation. Think about the welfare queens. Everybody hates welfare. Well, welfare is a good thing. It's a good word. It goes back to Franklin Delano Roosevelt and before then. Hell, we all want to be welfare, folks. It's not a negative thing. Building back better didn't mean transient relief like what was provided in the then recently passed American Rescue Plan, ARP. Its purpose was more exalted. This is the moment to reimagine and rebuild a new economy. Read a White House statement on Biden's infrastructure plan. I'm getting a little, there we go, some static in the audio that went away. And okay, so that's the intro. Let me put this chart up on screen, and then Stephen, you can just take off and talk about this article and about the graphic that you've put together here. It couldn't be more graphic, more startling about what's happening with Build Back Better, which wasn't what it was intended to be. And then, my God, look at this Pentagon spending, this line on the left. Talk about this.
So, it seems like a million years ago. It was only in, think back to just 2020 and like the fall of 2020, right before the elections. Democrats and Joe Biden were talking a very different tune. Like now it's all the deficit, reducing social spending, debt ceiling, that sort of. But Democrats were talking like sort of revolutionary in terms of, look, we're facing a pandemic. That the lesson from that is that federal budgets aren't working. They aren't meeting the demands. They don't embrace a definition of security beyond the military dimension. They're not talking about the threats to everyday life that people have. So with this chart, I was just trying to show that, it's just not happening. That lesson from the pandemic is sort of just another version of pandemic denialism, where we were supposed to have this reimagined state where we'd have fixed infrastructure, we'd have a more robust healthcare plan, and we'd have an actual formidable approach to climate. We have none of those things yet, but it's still being heralded as this revolution thing. Like, how many times have you heard that the Inflation Reduction Act is a quote unquote historic investment? It
Yeah.
is. It's incredibly weak. So as you can see here, I added the Inflation Reduction Act with the infrastructure bill combined to get this 985 billion over 10 years, which is how much the Build Back Better invests. Now, keep in mind the original amount over 0.1 trillion. And that's still not exact. That's, I mean, obviously a ton of money, but it was still spread out over 10 years. Progressives wanted, closer to 10 trillion over 10, or 1 trillion over 10 years. So, they wanted like the original amount that Bernie Sanders is pushing was like, I think 6 trillion over 10 years.
Yeah.
In that this agenda. So Biden really shortchanged progressives on the front end. And then soon enough, like not even a year into his presidency, and especially after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Biden just basically gave up on a social agenda. He just stopped caring, or he reverted to type, or he stopped pretending to care about it, and really leaned into military spending. And here I show that with the fiscal year 22 and 23 military budgets, we have over 1.7 trillion in military spending. So essentially, like, it's pretty close. I mean, next year we'll probably have a military budget that is equal to Build Back Better's 10-year investment.
Wow. Yeah, that's the point that I wanted to make for people that have a mathematical, statistical mind. And this chart tells it all. But if you don't, look at the horizontal on this, the axis, the horizontal axis going out over 10 years to get to where basically we're starting with the Pentagon spending right now. And then look at how quickly it goes up. And on the horizontal axis, that's denoting 1 year. This is, and I say this all the time on the show, it's a annually renewable program. It's guaranteed. It's locked in. They actually give the Pentagon more money than Congress allocates each year. The Democrats in control of the House of Representatives voted to do that when Trump was in office. And Jimmy Dore was the first to point this out to me, and I can't make that point strongly enough. Here's Donald Trump, the most hated man Democrats have ever encountered. The guy that they said was in league with the Kremlin, the hated Vladimir Putin, the man who was treasonous, the man that they wanted to put in shackles and chains, sometimes for good reason, folks. And they were throwing money at this guy to spend. I mean, the president does it because the Congress doesn't declare war. They're giving him more money than he asked for. And if that doesn't tell you how pervasive and out of our minds we are when it comes to the military industrial complex and this spending, it may have to do with fear. We're so fearful and afraid that we think that throwing this kind of money at the military industrial complex makes us safer. So we're willing to do that. Even when Trump was in office, they're doing the same thing now with Biden in office. The Republicans, maybe to a lesser extent, did the same thing with Biden in office. They voted to give Biden more money than even he wanted or needed, supposedly, to execute war around the world. It is absolutely breathtaking, Stephen.
Yeah, you raised an important point there, and both parties declare the other's leader an autocrat of sorts. But you can't say that and then turn around and then vote for the autocrat's favorite tool, which is their security apparatus. That's sort of like the bread and butter of autocracy. So I just talked about Pentagon and force projection abroad and sucking up social resources, but we're also talking about other forms of enforcement. So Department of Homeland Security with Customs and Border Patrol, ICE, Department of Justice programs that fund police programs even
Yes.
more than state and local governments do.
Yeah, and I know that you're out east, so you don't follow it, but it's been determined here that some police chief here in a small town in Iowa requested and received, and then for resale. I mean, there's a more nefarious part of this. Machine guns, this military surplus stuff in a small town in Iowa that hasn't seen a criminal since Bonnie and Clyde rolled through town. I mean, this guy's got a machine gun that you would mount on a tank, several of them. And this is the stuff that's coming down to America from the military industrial complex. Well, as I mentioned to start with here, we've only got half an hour with Stephen. Let me bring this back up on screen. Anything else on this chart that you want to talk about as far as the NDA and this funding for the Pentagon, Stephen?
I would look at, military spending and austerity always go hand in hand. So the Republican
Yes.
strategy now, especially now that they have the House, is essentially what McCarthy, House Speaker McCarthy, and what the kind of far right members of the Republican caucus were after, is essentially to basically gut everyday government functions, like maybe maintain some semblance of revolving trust fund that people pay into, like Social Security, but otherwise just basically gut government functions to make it just that and the military and law enforcement. And it's such an important strategy because the military adds so much to the deficit and overseas wars do, that then they jack up military spending, then claim because the deficit we can't afford more social spending.
Yeah. And what else do? They are the primary contributor, the institutional largest contributor to greenhouse gases and the climate destruction, which is going to destroy all humanity if we don't rein it in. We've got to rein the military in to do that. Instead, what are we doing? We're doing this. That's just one example. And of course, if you believe in precedent at all, you can look at the million people, the civilians that died in Iraq under a false flag. That's the other thing the military is accomplishing. There's nothing good coming from any of this. Most notably, that fear factor that I talked about earlier, we're not becoming any safer at all. And that's evidenced by the doomsday clock. I'm going to, again, bring that up shortly. We're at 90 seconds before midnight right now, or we have been this past year. I got a feeling we're going to click even closer. And it's because of some of these factors that Stephen is bringing forward. This shit is not working, folks. Let me bring this next chart up on screen. Again, this is from Speaking Security. This is from, go to Stephen's Substack and check it out. Like I said, and become a member. I am. It says only about a third of the fiscal year 2023 spending bill is for programs unrelated to military and law enforcement. What? I even had a segment on my show about the omnibus bill, and I was bitching about it from a lot of different angles, but I didn't realize this. Only a third of that bill, this huge pork barrel spending bill that everybody bitches about, only a third of it is unrelated to military and law enforcement. The rest of it, military and law enforcement. Now, when you become a member at Speaking Security, you'll see his postings, and he always gives you these situations, which is a great way to lead into these things. It says the House passed the fiscal year 2023 omnibus bill, sending it to Biden's desk for approval. Now, here's a breakdown of the 12 regular appropriation bills and 2 supplemental measures that make up the omnibus legislation. Outside of Department of Defense, DoD appropriations, the fiscal year 2023 bill primarily fattens up on military construction and veteran affairs spending. Okay, so here it is, and some of these highlights are mine. Some of the things that I talk about on my show all the time are my highlights, but go ahead and take off there, Stephen. Tell us what we're seeing here.
Sure. So what the omnibus bill funds is it's essentially these 12 funding bills that are smushed together, and those are passed every year, often in the form of an omnibus legislation, which is derived from Latin, where you just stuff a bunch of stuff together, rolled into a single bill, so you don't have to vote on every single one. And this one has 2 supplemental bills, which aren't approved annually. They're just, special to this year, or can be. So that includes disaster relief and grain aid. But as you can see, like the DoD bill The DoD funding bill is just one of 12 regular appropriations bills, but it consumes almost half funding of those 12 appropriations bills combined. So you can see the importance that you see, like as far like this is everything the federal government does. I mean, these are federal government operations. If this stuff doesn't get funded, the government shuts down, and half of its operating budget goes to goes to DoD.
The show, I think, are we getting smarter? Are we getting wiser? You always want to believe that you are when you head into the new year, but this is an ongoing issue that doesn't seem to be getting any resolution whatsoever. And you talk about these figures, this amount of money that we're talking about. I queried a friend of Stephen and mine, the great Matthew Ho, about what's going on in Afghanistan, which he is all knowledgeable about. Those people now, it's wintertime there, kind of like it is here. I mean, the weather's very similar. I mean, they're in the snow, they're in the cold, they're starving to death over there. We blew the shit out of that country for 20 years. Then we left and froze their money, and it's being doled out now slowly but surely. But I asked him, I said, is that money being doled out enough to keep those people alive? I'm thinking about the little kids and all that over there. And here's what Matthew said. He said the World Food Program is reporting that 6 million Afghans are at risk of starving to death, and 2/3 of the population doesn't have enough to eat. Again, think about no water, no electricity. Think about the worst circumstances in wintertime that you can imagine. Now, the World Food Program says it needs $2.2 billion to feed Afghanistan. Matt says that's less than what the Congress just gave the Pentagon, what we're talking about, per day. And again, I'm not a mathematician. Stephen is. He's a stats guy. I mean, he gets his stuff. Just think about that, $2 billion a day and this 1 point whatever trillion dollars. It's money that you can't get a visual on. And you look at his charts, you get closer to it. But Stephen, does it strike you that way? I mean, these are dollars and cents and they're charts and graphs, but eventually it comes down to humanity. My God, look what we're doing here.
Right. I mean, so much to take away from it. And, the obvious one is that Matthew Ho's the best, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He is.
But one thing, regarding the money, there's so much talk about corruption in Afghanistan and how local tribal leaders or government officials were pilfering funds for personal use, but not much is talked about the war or how Americans or how different American companies were profiting off the war. So, sneak peek of a project I'm going to do. I'm trying to do it like a times with Google Earth, and just kind of show the buildup of Arlington, Virginia, over a 20-year stretch after 9/11, to show, real estate prices as well, just to show how much money was, for the war, purportedly, was then shifted to private military contractors. And, if you look at, DC, you can probably track it too with like how much money was going into lawmakers' campaign accounts, military contractors, by just judging the amount of Michelin star restaurants that are in the DC metro area too. So it's odd how the U.S. was able to spend hundreds of $billions each year on that war, but suddenly now that the war is over, and it's not about force projection, it's not about enriching military contractors, just no political energy coming from anyone except for peace activists and Afghanistan special interest groups. To just provide just a meager sum of money. I mean, we should be talking about reparations at this point.
Yes.
Obviously, for African descendants and slaves, we should always be talking about that. But for Afghanistan, I mean, this is really a paltry sum. This is a rounding error, basically. Like, if I mess up a calculation, which I rarely do, but if I'm off by 2.2 billion, no one really cares because it's close enough. I mean, really. And it's sort of a make or break thing for these people. So it just shows, like, money is for the issue. It's just who the money is for seems to be the limiting factor.
Yeah, I think it was Chomsky that there comes that audio back. And by the way, this internet issue that we're seeing here, I told Stephen, I think it's attributed to Friday morning here in the United States. Everybody that's working remotely has to prove that they're working today, so they they do a Zoom call to work. I think that may have something to do with the internet issues that we're having. But Chomsky mentioned these worthy victims, who's worthy and unworthy. You look at Afghanistan again, after 20 years of what we did there, and then we left, and everybody's bitching about the way that we left. Forget that. Forget what we did. Think about what we did, for God's sake. And then $2 billion could feed those people. And look at the money that we're spending to what? Go blow up other places. We're not spending it on that. And what makes me think about it more than anything, we got a little reporting coming out of the state of Iowa here, Stephen. They're wanting to clamp down on these damn people using food stamps, people that are going to the stores, these unworthy victims. And they're making sure that they don't get American cheese. Believe it or not, we've got 1.5 billion pounds of cheese in storage in this country because we subsidize the dairy industry to produce all of this cheese that nobody eats or wants. Milk gets dumped and all that type of thing. Here it is sitting there. And this is how our elected politicians are responding to the issues of the day. They're wanting to keep people from eating any of this cheese, for God's sake, if you can imagine that. And it makes me think about homelessness, the other thing that's in the news a lot. And I want to bring this up on screen, talking about the difference between $1 billion and $1 trillion, like Stephen is talking about. And I say on the show that $1 trillion is a stack of $1,000 bills if they printed them, which they don't. But if you had a stack of $1,000, $1,000 bills, it would reach 67 miles high. Well, this is from Global Living. It said it's a couple of years old, but it bears paying attention to. According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, it would cost $20 billion to end homelessness in the United States. Yeah, end it. That is a big number, yes, but let's put it in perspective. Americans spend $19 billion a year on unplugged appliances. Appliances that they're not even using. Okay, Americans spend more than $35 billion a year on gym memberships. The U.S. government spent around $718 billion. Now, this was back in 2019, and it's now approaching $1 million in these add-ons for Ukraine and all that type of thing, that $1.3 trillion figure that we were talking about before on its military alone. So, okay, I wanted to bring this up because this really struck my eye. This is out of USA Today. It goes along with what I was talking about, how the cities around America are cracking down on homeless camps. We've got this huge homeless issue. And right away, I look at this, and again, I don't run with the traffic. I look at things differently than a lot of people do, but I look at this, and I believe that's a woman that's pushing a shopping cart. My God, how tragic is this? She's in the snow. That's her suitcase with her worldly belongings in it, probably. Too big of a suitcase to just carry, so she's got it in a shopping cart. But that circle, that's mine. I circled her in red because look at her. I mean, people like to talk about body language all the time and all this kind of crap, and they believe that homeless people are homeless because they want to be. But the most of them that I see look like this. They're concealing themselves. They're hiding. My God, how tragic is this? She doesn't want to be homeless. She doesn't want to be seen this way. So as you look at the photograph out in public, you can't really see who she is. I want people to think about that when it comes to homeless people. And here's this article. Law stiffened even as more people are forced to live on the street. Federal data shows 582,462 people were experiencing homelessness on a single night in January 2022. So just about a year ago in the United States, about 500,000 people. And we're throwing money on this military furnace like Stephen and I were talking about, and we're allowing 500,000 people to live out in the cold. And they say, well, my God, what do you want us to do? Build them houses? Hell yeah. Go ahead and do it. You build a dog house, don't you? These people are living under tarps. They're living in tents, for God's sake, around the country. Build them put a roof over their heads and see how long it lasts. Well, yeah, but what if they don't take care of it? What if they burn it down? I don't care. Burn them and build them another one. I mean, honest to God, that's the way that I look at it. I talked a lot there. I don't like to do a rant when I've got Stephen, but Stephen, I'll bring you back in and get your thoughts on this.
And the rant was well deserved. I mean, not even just the staggering amount of people who are homeless, but I mean, by every metric that I'm aware of, there's more and more people who are on brink or like kind of staring into the homeless abyss, that they have a real shot of becoming homeless within the next 6 months or 12 months. So, I mean, as you said about the doomsday clock before, it's not like military spending is doing in itself is keeping us safe, stuff that it's supposed to, but it's also about what we're giving up, which is not building housing, not just for homeless people, but for people who just need affordable housing or can't afford, in DC, for example, who can't afford, a $2,500 studio apartment
Yeah.
per month. So there's so much stuff that we could be doing, and the only thing that really keeps me from becoming too cynical about this stuff is that the military-industrial complex has a lot of what we want for the rest of us. I mean, it has socialized
Yes.
medicine through the VA.
Yeah.
Joe Biden signed an executive order that mandates a $15 minimum wage for all federal contractors, and most of federal procurement and most of federal contracting goes to the military. And they have a special. The Pentagon has a special branch for trying to make housing more affordable for military families. So much stuff we could be doing that we already have the tools and methodologies in place. How beyond the pale if it happens outside the military industrial complex.
Well, we're just about out of time. I got a couple of other things here very quickly that I wanted to get to. I wanted to have Stephen talk about, and he's following the military now. And this is what I entitled this particular slide, How World War III Begins. And you may have seen this in the news, folks, but it can't be overstated. And it was underreported, I think. We're training Ukrainian soldiers on those Patriot systems right now in Oklahoma, here in the United States. And then this talks about a top U.S. general, Milley, visiting training site for Ukrainian soldiers. Now, this is out of Germany, but it reads, the message was coming through loud and clear. Those are my highlights. What's the message that's coming through loud and clear? NATO, and of course, NATO is synonymous with the United States in many ways, is becoming much more involved in this war. We know that. We're reporting that. We see that. Guess who else does? Yeah, the Vlad Putin. He does. This is all bad, and it feeds into the doomsday clock counting down. To me, and I don't know how world wars start exactly. I don't know that anybody does, but this is, to me, this is kind of how you get one going, Stephen. This looks like the beginning to me.
It's becoming more blatant, isn't it? That it's a full-fledged proxy war. And it's striking, how many, as this war drags on, and it's clear that the doomsday clock and the nuclear risk you're talking about are becoming more apparent. They often talk in proxy war terms. So the White House staff Ron Klain liked the tweet a couple of weeks back. I talked about this with Brianna Gray on her podcast.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah. Essentially, it was an article that the chief of staff liked that basically saying, look what such a low cost endeavor this is for the U.S. to wear Russian conventional forces. It's like, first off, wearing down Russia's conventional forces means that increasingly Russia's only military tool is its nuclear forces, which we don't want to go towards. And also this language of, look at this cost benefit analysis, which is a great investment it is. It drives me up the wall because 100,000 Ukrainians are dead. Probably that many Russians are dead too. This is not low cost. It's low cost. I mean, because you're not in it. And I mean, it's striking how many people are so flippant about lives who have a Ukrainian fucking flag in their Twitter profile.
I know it. You see it all the time. And that takes us to one of the final points here that I want to, and I'm very cognizant of Stephen's time, that people like, what can I do? Well, what can we do? I mean, we're helpless. Well, not really. Here's what I tell people. This is a good starting point. Withhold your vote. Tell these politicians when they contact you, you're not going to vote for them. They don't care about that so much. It doesn't seem like they do. What they really care about is the money. Tell them that you're not going to donate any longer. If they're calling you, it's probably because you've donated. And tell them you're not going to donate if they continue to feed this military furnace that we're talking about. And you think, well, George, they'll still get their money from the big corporations. They don't care about that either, but they do. And it's because of marketing. If you listen to these politicians, they all like to tout how their contributions, a goodly portion of them come from small, everyday people. withhold that small everyday people money, and they can't market with that. That's significant. That will mean something to them. And then what else can you do? And we're going to run out of time. I'm going to play this real quick. This is just a minute, and then we'll let Stephen go. This is the great Medea Benjamin that was just on my show, Stephen. I'm sure that you've seen this clip. You could also do something like this, but if you've really got the balls, check this out.
That is the most ridiculous thing I have seen. The world community wants to keep the Iran nuclear deal. Our allies are the Germans, the French, the British. They want to keep in this deal. The world community wants to keep the deal. Let's talk about normal countries. Let's talk about Saudi Arabia. Is that who our allies are? They are the biggest threat to the world community. And let's talk. You're hurting me. You're actually hurting me. I want to ask, do you think these sanctions are hurting the regime, or are they hurting the Iranian people? They're hurting the Iranian people. You are making a case for a war with Iran. How did the war with Iraq turn out? You're doing
That's just great. Well, and the video broke up there a little bit, but of course she's talking about that Iran nuclear-powered treaty, and the fact that the United States is not getting that thing ratified. Instead of what we're imposing these murderous sanctions on the Iranian people. And this was a think tank that was promoting this. Warmongers par excellence. And Medea just got up on stage and did that. I just love that kind of stuff. And she's been on the show before. So, do what I talked about. Withhold your vote, withhold your money. And if you want to go to the next step, do what Medea does, because this stuff does make a difference. Those people, they wanted to have a very sedate warmongering forum there, and Medea wasn't having any of it. That's great stuff, Stephen.
Right. Medea is so cool. Code Pink, that's such an invaluable thing that they do. And there's so many different things she could have said. She could have brought up, it's not like she was going to walk in with like one of my charts in hand or whatever, but you could bring up, how Hudson Institute is just bankrolled by military contractors. So nothing really what they said is exactly entirely credible, at least on its surface, because there's such an obvious conflict of interest going on. And one thing that the peace movement, at least the professional peace movement, does, DC-centric Beltway community peace activists, is building momentum for a grassroots movement. You'd be surprised how many members of Congress, or how many members of Congress I've talked to who don't hear, pro-peace voices. So that's something that goes back to what you're saying there. There's room for your voice, especially in that space, and it'd be very much appreciated if you localized it.
We're out of time. I'm going to let him go, folks. And we do have some internet issues here. Again, I attribute it to Friday morning on the web. This happens a lot. I want to give you last word, Stephen. Again, I'll put up on screen the Substack address. That might be the best way for people to go and to get your stuff the moment that it releases. But give us a close here as we wrap up this edition of the Live Line.
Not much of a close here, George. I would just say support independent media. Particularly my Substack, please subscribe, and support the podcasts that have people who don't necessarily get their 15 minutes with the mainstream media. So for George's podcast.
That's great, pal. I really appreciate that. I've got this up on screen big now. This is the Substack address. This is stevensemler.substack.com. It's not expensive, and you will be informed, and you'll know what the hell's going on. And it's just gratifying to be able to chip in and be a part of sanity instead of the insanity that's going on, because it's all about who are we? And folks, that helps you define who you are. Stephen Semler, thanks again for coming on this podcast by George Liveline.
Thank you, George. Take care.
Yeah, and folks, like I tell people all the time, now, if you want to see Stephen on the show, I have him on as often as I can get him. He's very busy. He's going away now. He'll be back again, in a month or two, probably. He's the co-founder of SPRI Security Policy Reform Institute. He follows the money on U.S. foreign and domestic policy topics. He writes for working class grassroots organizers and candidates, but he says all are welcome. So you can contract his services. Learn more about the Security Policy Reform Institute at securityreform.org and follow him at Stephen on Twitter. And that's Stephen with a PH. And it's just Stephen Semler on Twitter. Thanks to everybody for watching this morning. Thanks to give a special shout out to there she is, Suzanne Murphy. She had a lot of great comments there. Thanks for watching and making those comments, because it really does make a big difference, folks, for the show to have this on. And I tell people my standard closing now is to go to podcastbygeorge.com, and you can always sign up for Facebook and YouTube there, get the live streams when they release in video on podcastbygeorge.com, but the audio platforms are there also. And I would say probably more people listen to them than watch them. And you can get them on iTunes. You can get them on the iHeartRadio app, Deezer, even Amazon, Spotify, all kinds of places. But enjoy the weekend. We'll be back again early next week with another great guest. But that's going to do it. That's all there is. And there ain't no more. That's another podcast by George.